It could, but I find it a bit more difficult to maneuver in Demon Hunter compared to, say, Paladin, where you do have a bunch of cheap spells after you get the Librams of Wisdoms online to necessarily keep proccing the Penflingers with. With Demon Hunter, a lot of the spells that you get require you also drawing Wandmaker first to really make the Penflingers have their time in the limelight. But even just played out as 1/1s that deal 1 damage here and there can be completely justified in certain matchups. But finally, we are getting into the action, and it will be that warrior for NikosFas, and already the Zephyrus looking like it is going to get tossed away and not going to be active.
Ready to go indeed. Not been the best spell for Greek Hearthstone, obviously with Fino relegating out of Grandmasters, but like I said, they take their joy where they can get it when their players go up a long way in these tournaments, and they really do support them well, which I'm a big fan of seeing. And now with the Control Warrior against the Demon Hunter, as I said, should usually be in a pretty good situation, but I mean, already XC's got a decent little hand here. He can get some board control rolling in the starting turns, and then try and follow up with sticking the Lapidary.
It's a decent curve for XC, has that mana feeder for the next turn. Just misses Wandmaker this turn, but it's not a big deal. I think it's great that he top decked the Spirit Jailer just to have that Fragment Shuffler, which would have been a problem if he had not had a guaranteed activation for Lapidary, because I think getting that 5/5 down ASAP will be his best avenue to victory. For NikosFas, the Corsair Cache is just a one-of in this deck because he only runs one of each of Ankar and the Livewire lands.
Okay, doesn't want to deviate over to the Soulshare here, instead relying on getting those minions through. I mean, due to the fact that there's a 2/3 on the other side of the board, I think you have a reasonable chance of them having to tank the damage with their face as well, which is pretty good for you.
NikosFas can use his Livewire lands here, but it's one attack short of really making this clean. Uh-oh, looks like we have a bit of an issue here. I hope that gets solved really quickly, but we can still talk about the board state. The Goblin Lackey can be used to make the trades happen a bit cleaner, but it feels redundant if he's going to swing the weapon anyway.
Maybe.
Agreed. We're going to get those issues sorted out as soon as possible. But just with the way that game was shaping out, I think that was kind of what you expect in the starting turns. But really, the tech cards for the late game really coming in already to hurt NikosFas, with the Rattlegore quite clearly looking weak at that point, and even the Blood Boil Brute taking a while to get going. It's a deck of a lot of disparate parts that kind of work together, but you obviously have to draw them all at the right time. Like, if he wants to go for the Blood Boil, he hopefully needs to find the Risky Skipper as well to go along with that. So both players, I think, needing a little bit more before their game plans can actually cohesively come together.
Right, I'm glad you brought that up, because Control Warrior, if you compare it to Bomb Warrior, has only that one game plan of trying to outlast the Demon Hunter and get through all of their damage before they close out the game. Whereas with Bomb Warrior, they could, with certain hands, go for that type of game plan, but a lot of other times they end up racing, and that can be the most difficult thing for Demon Hunter to deal with if they don't hit the Eldrazi Warblades. For the Control Warrior matchup, I think the Demon Hunter has a lot more freedom on how they allocate their damage, and they won't necessarily be forced into going for awkward trades just to make sure they stay alive.
Indeed. Our wonderful pause feature, meaning that nothing is lost here on the turn with the slight connectivity issues. Nikos going for the attack into the Spirit Jailer is kind of interesting. I feel like you could potentially have gotten away with an attack face on that turn, or maybe even not swing at all. But it does, I guess, force them to trade the 1/1 into the 3/1, if nothing else.
Yeah, it felt weird, didn't it? Because even if you left the Spirit Jailer as a 1/3, if it goes into the Goblin Lackey, then you could kill it again that way. But I think the upside for this play from NikosFas, like you said, it forces a 1/1 into 3/1 trade, and then he has the freedom to send this next swing wherever he likes. So probably maximum flexibility for the cost of 1 extra health at the moment, which I think is still reasonable.
And now we're already starting to see the balance that needs to be struck for XC, because I was talking about the ability to play many Penflingers over the course of the game. Trying to weave them in wherever possible over your turn is very powerful, of course, because you get multiple activations. But when it comes at the cost of pretty big tempo swings, like for example, Soul Shard Lapidary on that turn, do you think it's worth it to be weaving these in over developing actual stats onto the board?
It's really close. I honestly was just looking at Coin Lapidary there. It could be that XE is just thinking more long-term, maybe even a Coin Militia type of game plan if he just skips over the Lapidary altogether, but it doesn't feel like he has enough fragments to justify that quite yet. Choices for NikosFas. He does just run Bladestorm in the deck, so a little bit of redundancy there I don't think would hurt him.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I was honestly looking at Slam just to make sure that you are continuing to turbo cycle through your deck, but I guess in all honesty, that's not really necessary at this point. He's getting some pretty decent draw already. He's got plenty to spend his mana on for the next few turns.
Commencement would be so sick if he could pull out Rattlegore, but it's in hand right now.
I mean, I'd take Elysiana, honestly. That's why it's in the deck, I think.
It's true. Even Deathwing is a good outcome, but we are tunneling on those because there's a bunch of whiffs in there. The 2 risky skippers, the Sky Raider, the Armor Smiths that you don't want to spend 7 mana on. Huge top deck for XC. That is a reward for holding onto the coin. If he did top deck Skull there, if he was not able to coin it out, it's very possible it would have gotten stranded.
Pretty brutal outcome though, with both of the soul shards coming one after the other to ruin his cheapening of his hand. The thing I want to bring up is that when you have Sociologist Militia in hand, you often have to be kind of cautious about playing Skull because it can do exactly that and draw all your fragments. But I think in this kind of a slow matchup, it's very likely that you'll be able to juice it up again, back to a lot of 3/3s coming down. So I like just going for point Skull there from XC.
Agreed. Just trying to make sure he has all of the information as soon as possible and getting the Skull online before it can get locked, because if he didn't play it that turn, it was going to be a long time before it would end up in outcast position again. But that is another huge top deck, means that he doesn't have to expend Blade Dance to deal with NikosFas's meager but still significant board presence.
Interesting to see that the way that XE is kind of metering out his mana here, because I was kind of looking at Penflinger again right there. He had 3 mana and could have gone Penflinger, Demon Companion, and then Hero Power for just like maximum damage. But he goes with the Wand Maker instead, I guess, just to keep his hand full of flexible options.
I mean, this could be a Penflinger turn with the Demon Companion. He's picked up the Soul Shear now, which he really needed at some point to activate Militia and the Lapidary that he has currently. But for now, since he doesn't have much better to spend his mana on, I don't mind the Penflinger whatsoever. This could also just be a Cane turn.
Seems reasonable to me. Man, that really was unlucky with the Skull, wasn't it? Like 17 cards in the deck and he gets one off the other, both Soul Fragments.
Yeah, don't love to see that. NikosFas is getting close to the point where he could just drop the Rattlegore, and that's pretty much an eternal problem if XE doesn't have the Consume Magic to get rid of it.
And he, I believe, is actually a consumer, has 1 in his deck, which would be a pretty big deal to find. I mean, Rattlegore is the kind of card that if they drop it on anything other than a completely clear board, you're not that afraid of it because you just turn things up to the maximum aggro game plan. But at the very least, if it's not answered, Rattlegore does put a clock on the game one way or the other.
Bit of an awkward turn for NikosFas, where I do think he was looking for a neat setup with the Blood Boil Brood, but there was just no way of really cheapening it because his only activator for Skipper is the Barov, which he doesn't want to use that resource on. Holding on to this last charge of the Ankar as well because he doesn't want to overdraw.
It's a nice pickup now, though. I'm liking the look of that Marrow Slicer. It's just about how you want to spend the rest of your mana, because Double Jump is kind of tempting to reactivate the Penflinger after throwing it down, but it draws you the Skull some of the time. Obviously, it can draw Consume Magic, which you don't really want to draw the Skull here.
Yeah. It's close, though. I think you can justify just going for Double Jump for that extra push of damage, because I think he has stuff to do for the near future where you don't necessarily mind having the other Skull in hand. Really close, though.
Yeah, okay, I agree. I think I quite like the double jump here.
Especially since it also just has 50-50 to not get the skull itself.
Okay, it's not gonna be
Brute.
Rattlegold
Yeah,
quite
that
yet.
does not feel good, but he just didn't have any better options. Really holding on to the skipper for the armor smiths. That is NikosFas' best lifeline to stave off the damage that'll be coming hard and fast real soon.
Oh, now we're talking though. This is getting pretty juicy. Like Soul Shears, Pen Flingers. I guess going for the Militia on this turn is fine while the Soul Fragments are in your deck, but there's a lot of ways to beef up this damage now for XC.
I'll be happy he held on to the Barov here, although we could also see some type of skipper plague turn. It would involve him having to draw another pirate to activate the skipper first. Just deciding whether or not he wants to swing. Without another weapon in hand, I can see him holding on to it. So what he can do here is potentially Barov and shield slam his Barov. It just depends on how much he values the skipper, because that's his best activator for Armor Smith.
So many choices.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm looking if there's any way he can get away with not having playing either, or try and like lock down a board. So he can go for playing Blood Boil and maybe Plague of Wrath on the same turn as well. Oh no, sorry, they would destroy his own board. But yeah, then go for all the other minions as well, sorry.
Yeah, well, this is the old interaction where you just rely on the Sky Raider generation to be your third activator for the skipper. Just funny that he ends up with a skipper itself. It's that crucial card draw going, and he still has enough mana to shield slam the Militia.
Whoa, now we're talking though. We've been waiting for a while for all this card draw to come through and this armor game to come through. And now Risky Skipper, Armor Smith, plus the Bloodsworn. This is crazy amounts of armor that can be generated.
That will be backbreaking for XC to try and get through. Not to mention, this board is also looking at least a little bit threatening and maybe going to warrant a Blade Dance, but he's going to start off with the Skull.
Poor Warlock.
You'd have to imagine ending with a Blade Dance on this turn as well. It's just about how he wants to utilize the rest of that mana alongside it. And he started to put some pretty beefy threats down alongside the clear.
Yeah, first glance, the Lapidary Blade Dance looks pretty enticing. This is on another discount again, which is a bit unfortunate for XC here because he really needs the damage to come in on consecutive turns. He won't have the luxury of piecing together the Pen Flingers, I think, for a very long time.
I like NikosFas taking his foot off the pedal just for a turn here. This isn't quite the time to go all in yet. You can wait until they play a few smaller minions, then you let rip and really blow XC out of this game.
Also love him holding on to the Lackey there. It's just not accomplishing very much on this Evil Quartermaster, but it can be an additional proc for what will be most likely a double Armor Smith turn.
And I mean, now it really does feel like the time to start working in these Pen Flingers, because even though earlier we were saying, oh, it comes at the expense of developing tempo and all that stuff, he needs to start milking the damage now. And so I think, if anything, you could argue this is late, but it's definitely time to start weaving in these Pen Flingers.
Yes, he just didn't have better ways of using his mana otherwise, and now he's just hoping that the Armor Smith isn't there for NikosFas. He should know about the Skipper because all the Anchor charges have been used. But this is so much armor gain here.
Yeah, this is going to get a little bit silly now. Probably going to damage Quartermaster a couple times deliberately and then cash it in. Oh, it's also clean.
I think the way he went about it was for maximum armor gain. There's a route where I think he ends up with a stronger board if he trades the Quartermaster, like you said, cash it in, and then end with the Lackey on some other minion. But this way he gets maximum armor.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'm not going to begrudge him too much for going about it this way.
I mean, it's getting to the point where he can just count up because XC is just 6 cards left in the deck right now, and some of those are fragments, that maybe it just doesn't add up to 48. Penflingers are difficult to account for, but on top of that, NikosFas just has the freedom to drop Rattlegore next turn, it very much feels like.
Yeah, I think that's rapidly where we're approaching, because you also got to remember that Kargath is a real menace in its own right. Kargath potentially, even with the second Bloodsworn Mercenary on the same turn, could shuffle 2 Kargath Primes into your deck. It's a real menace. As, of course, is Rattlegore.
I always just take a short pause to enjoy the battle cry. I mean, the voice line that he shouts when he lands on the board. XC now has Altruist to put together with the Penflingers, which is, you know, it's a lot of damage.
He is also, I believe, guaranteed to get a Consume Magic at this point off of the double jump.
Right.
Which means he, I believe, could actually end up with no Rattlegore on the other side at the end of the turn.
Very likely he doesn't even care about silencing the Rattlegore necessarily this turn. Yeah. There was a line where you just go for Penflingers, you accept that you're gonna take 9 and then you could silence it next turn. Or just not even silence it this turn. Okay. That's really difficult to optimize there.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have my questions. Like, clearing this off the board and leaving yourself with an uncontested, at least on board, Altruist felt like a pretty good deal to go for with the Blade Dance. But fair enough, this does technically, like, milk out the most amount of damage if you assume your Altruist is dying anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assumption to make, having not seen Brawls, the other Bladestorm, Barov. There's just no way Nikos is face tanking any of the minion damage on board. So XC is just trying to get as much Penflinger damage as he can throughout the course of the game. And to be fair, he's gotten NikosFas down to below 30, which is impressive.
Fair enough. I don't think he's going to be staying there for long, though, as, like I was saying, 2 Kargath Primes in the deck, as well as just a pretty respectable offensive push he's making here, is going to be very, very difficult for XC to overcome.
Yeah, the offensive push is the real kicker here, right? Because honestly, XC's at a point where he probably doesn't even end his turn with any minions on board, and so at least the first Kargath Prime is not necessarily a big worry in terms of gaining armor immediately. I think the Rattlegore for the counter-lethal is what's really scary here.
Although, to be fair, he does have Consume Magic plus the Blade Dance to clear up everything on this turn. I think as afraid as you are of Kargath Prime, you probably have to silence the Rattlegore over the Death Rattle on Kargath.
It's super close. If he can just add up the damage and say, I have lethal next turn, then he doesn't even need to interact with the board at all. But it's really tough to do that with the amount of Penflingers he has to get through. And it looks like he is just going for that Blade Dance play. I do like this silence on the Rattlegore over the Kargath because he's just not gonna give a Prime a target to immediately rush into, and he hopes that it's not an immediate top deck here.
That's a really good point, that will take a turn to actually gain the armor. So maybe at this point he's just going for, you know, Penflinger, bounce them back. Just spend like 6 mana every turn if possible on Penflingers.
Yeah, that is absolutely the plan, to milk out the damage, but he's down to his last spell now, so Penflingers aren't able to get that much extra damage this turn. Maybe the weapon can do some work.
Doesn't look very hopeful though, does it? As I think he may have actually just conceded there, realizing that it wasn't getting the job done in the end.
That certainly seemed anticlimactic in the way it ended, because it looked like he was getting there, but of course he is completely aware of what cards he had remaining and probably not enough spells to offset any armor gain that NikosFas could just naturally gain off of his hero power. A valiant effort though. The Penflingers put together way more damage than I was expecting throughout the whole course of the game.
Yeah, fair play to XC. I think he gave it the best chance he could. There was a little bit in the mid game where I was looking at the potential for, we were saying coin lapidary, for example, to just get some stats on the board, but maybe even go like the other way and just try and get more pen flingers in over the course of the game. There are a couple of spots where he could have milked a little bit of extra damage. I doubt it would have made enough of a difference in the end, as NikosFas' deck is literally just primed purely to deal with the likes of Warrior and Demon Hunter, and so it does the job it's supposed to do there. Demon Hunter still needing to get a win, but I think it's got a bit of a better chance now against the Mage and Rogue from Nikos.
Yes, if we look at how this warrior is lined up against specifically Demon Hunter and Bomb Warrior, it makes sense why Nikos would bring a deck like that because Demon Hunter is so popular. But we had our questions, one because of the Elysian attack and two because of just how it's positioned with the lineup as a whole. Because I don't feel that Mage is particularly strong if you're trying to target Demon Hunter. He maybe just feels that the warrior is strong overall. It's the Galakrond Rogue that is the real X factor because I'm not sure if this slots into any target lineup whatsoever. It feels like a deck that you just bring if you're comfortable playing it and you like it as a pocket deck.
Yeah, and he's got a pretty cool twist on things here because he's cut the secret package entirely from his deck. I mean, he also doesn't run secret passage for that matter. But he's gone with a stealth build here, which I think is kind of interesting of a way to go about it. My main criticism really with Galakrond Rogue was that even though when it got to a lead in the early game, it wasn't actually pushing to a victory. It wasn't closing out games quickly enough. It was just doing some flashy, fancy footwork and then ultimately taking ages to win the game. But this stealth version maybe overcomes that with a little bit more damage in the early game.
Yeah, also just gives him pretty consistent cycle. I think the secret package is definitely more in the realm of what you're saying of doing fancy things, but not necessarily getting that game-ending damage. The cycle helps him get to the pole count, to the Togwaggle, and that's the power spike that closes out the game in 2 turns if you manage to put those two together. And even if you don't hit the pole count, just fully charged Galakrond is still an extremely powerful card.
Just kind of annoying stuff happening right now, honestly, for XC. Like, he doesn't want to play this Panthara if he knows it's just going to be traded into. He wants his minions to be able to go face. But at the same time, the alternative is like Twin Slice Coin, Hero Power, Blade Dance, which feels like a massive overcommittal into dealing with this board.
Yeah, I think you could have thought about Chaos Strike, Hero Power here, but because XC's hand is double Blade Dance, he doesn't even want to sink damage into minions. He says, I am just gonna go about drawing my cards. The next thing you commit, I'm gonna Blade Dance. And he's fine taking a little bit of extra damage in the early game because he knows that the reach from the Galakrond Rogue doesn't really come into play until the late game.
And all in all, this just feels pretty clean so far from Nikos. He goes with, I think, the correct target here with the Lackey in order to protect his higher attack minion from Marrow Slicer exactly as the expected target. And also with no soul fragments in the deck, Coin Lapidary isn't even a consideration yet.
Yeah, that is super annoying for XC here. He has a clear if he likes with, I suppose, Soul Shear, Twin Slice, Coin, Blade Dance, but that does feel like an overcommittal once again. Anything that involves using the coin before he's even had the flexibility to use with a skull potentially feels like too much because, again, he's fine taking damage in the early game.
Alarm bells, I think, for Nikos should start to be ringing now, though, because that was just the first Soul Fragment Shuffler, and there wasn't an attack there, which I think could indicate a Shard Shatter plus a swing on the following turn, or some other damage effect to clear off the board. So I like that he's holding back a little bit on the minions here, rather than going all in.
Right, he puts down the one minion that if it dies, he's kind of happy because he needs to draw better things to do than just going on with stealth minions. XC once again has a Blade Dance option, but he can Soul Shear first on the 1/1 to or the 3/3, same thing, to guarantee that the Blade Dance will hit the best targets.
Yeah, I think you're perfectly happy here, but I mean, now for Nikos, you start to realize, oh man, these 1/3s weren't doing much damage in the early turns. Oh wait, they draw you a card when they die. Now the real power comes through, and his hand is just full of things to do once again. The pressure is not slowing down one iota.
Yeah. It wasn't necessarily full of things to do until he generated the perfect mana cost of Reborn minion, because the Seal Fates are super awkward for him here. XC just hasn't
That's
put
fair.
down any minions for him to target with. Second Blade Dance feels fine here.
I think that's where I'm leading up to. You can go for Mana Feeder as well, obviously, and then clear off the rest of the board. It's really scary to be left with no Blade Dances against Galakrond Rogue, which can make some pretty beefy minions, but the rest is just never gaining board control, it feels like.
Yeah. And the question is, what option does he have going into 7 mana to really develop a big board after he's seen so many stealth minions? I think my answer would only be Jandis here. But XC is going to hold off on the Blade Dance, maybe just respecting exactly that.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, it was definitely not forced from his hand there, but I don't know, I wouldn't have hated to see it there at all. I think it would have been the way I was going.
Nikos gonna go for the Shield of Galakrond maximum board presence here, but not gonna lie, I was eyeing the Seal Fates just to take the targets while they're there.
That's a good point. I think the thing that they're demonstrating right now, though, is that they don't necessarily have these wide board answers. So going all in on these minions while you can, I think is reasonable.
That's fair. Yeah, Shard Shatter would have been pretty strong last turn, and it is even stronger this turn, but Nikos probably just made the read that it wasn't there. And XC is going to go digging for it with the Skull. If he doesn't hit it, it's very likely just dead.
He really, really needs it. Altruis is 1 mana too expensive to come down quite yet.
And the fragments means that he doesn't get the discount! Oh, disaster!
Brutal.
Disaster.
So he can stay alive from his perspective, at least.
Right.
But then he's going to be tanking just perfect lethal damage right on the other side.
6, 9, 11. Yeah, because of the Eviscerate.
Yeah. My goodness. I mean, I was talking about Galakrond Rogue not being able to close out the games. Look at what Nikos just did. That was an absolute slaughter with his Galakrond Rogue, playing super aggressively for tempo, super aggressively for aggro, just killing his opponent, and it worked just gorgeously for him.
I mean, I agree with your point. Galakrond Rogue doesn't normally win this way. I think maybe the greed on holding the second Blade Dance is where my question would be for XC. I still understand where he's coming from for it, but there are situations where if you don't pick up the Shard Shatter, the next board is just going to be pushing that question even harder, and then Blade Dance doesn't even necessarily clean it up because it's more than 3 minions.
Yeah, I think I agree. It was it didn't in that instance, I should say, work out well for XC. But that's not to say that with a slightly different pan out, maybe you could have got more value if he was expecting things to go a little bit longer. He did get pretty unlucky both this game and in the previous game with the way that those soul fragments were working out, either not coming down in time or coming at the wrong time with the skull to deny him the perfect cards to be able to go for. But it does now mean that Nikos is left with only his Mage, the tempo Mage that is so infamous and so ubiquitous in this meta game. Slightly less so, of course, with the recent nerfs, but I am in full agreement that it's still the way to go with Mage and is a strong addition to any lineup.
Absolutely. I think this list is just card for card the same one I use on Ladder, with the 1 Arcane Intellect in there, 1 Conjurer's Calling, and the Devolving Missiles tech, which I really like. The Dragon version, of course, still popular, and I think people are just pretty much split down the middle, and the discrepancies on the favor for the Mage are so discreet that I think I can't begrudge anyone for going for either or.
Well, XC is not being swayed off of his Demon Hunter quite yet, going for it 3 times in a row. 3rd time's the charm. And is already taking a somewhat defensive line of play by keeping the Soul Shear, but against Mage, I think there's enough targets to where it's actually quite a premium early game card.
Yeah, certainly fine just to answer a lab partner on one, Solarian if you choose, and just importantly being a guaranteed soul fragment shuffler, which I've seen one too many Demon Hunter games be lost by the fact that they just had all of their Spirit Jailers and Marrow Slicers at the bottom.
Well, we were just saying that there's plenty of targets to be shooting in the early game, and I think Soldier here is fine. It's not like you're starved for removal for the remaining few turns, and it does, at the very least, activate that Shard Shatter for if you have an emergency next turn.
Right, and you know, honestly, even if it's not a major emergency, like the single minion, I wouldn't mind seeing the Shard Shatter come down because his curve does just say Marrow Slicer next turn, and it's looking quite aggressive. Especially with the Militia drawn, I think that would kind of sway you off of using the coin here. I also don't mind just Eldraki here and set up for a bigger Shard Shatter as long as he doesn't use the coin.
The Eldraki's weird, right? Because, I mean, the play to me still says most likely Marrow Slicer next turn, but maybe he's just trying to bait the Shard Shatter with his opponent overcommitting next turn, which I guess is also a reasonable thing to assume.
Yeah. You could just be saying even if NikosFas does play another minion here, it's still going to be the Marrow Slicer, and he'll take the damage in the meantime and then just go for Shard Shatter while he's gotten the weapon swings in. Extremely slow hand for NikosFas. The nerf to evocation can absolutely be felt here because if that were 1 mana, I would almost certainly just go for Apprentice evocation next turn and play as many things as I can to cheapen the Giants.
I really like that he's taking it slow, though. This hand, I think, you're just waiting for them to play anything, really. Any minion, and then you can just go Apprentice, Double Ray, Evocation, maybe with Shenvala as well, now that that's been picked up at this point.
Right.
But basically, just you need things to target with the cheap spells, because so many of those cheap mage spells, like Frostbolt, Ray of Frost, Brain Freeze, you need something to target with them. And so you're just waiting for the Lapidary or whatever to come down.
Interesting target for Consume Magic. I figured he would rather silence Raz.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he's leading up to killing Raz with his weapon would be my conclusion based off that.
Okay, well, he would have to commit a Twin Slice for that. I don't know what he was hovering coin for other than next mana feeder, but it definitely feels like he's holding on to this for Militia on the next turn. But like you said, he was just waiting, NikosFas was, for a single minion on the other side to get played, and here he is going for the maximum cheapening on the Giants, trying to get the Giants down as early as now, which is why he didn't commit the Shenvala 3 mana.
Pretty good outcome as well. And of course, XC, the god that he is, silencing the spell damage means that only one card, or one card less, is drawn here off the cram session. Obviously somewhat tongue-in-cheek.
Ooh, picks the Conjurer's Calling because he has Mana Giant next turn, and already this current board is a big threat here. XC has been holding on to the Shard Shatter for quite a long time now, and it feels pretty necessary, although the Militia does have quite a few rushers in it right now.
That's an interesting one, because I was going to say you want to use Militia to be a threat rather than to clear up, but a lot of them are actually value trades, right? Rather than just having to sacrifice the 3/3s.
Yeah.
I don't know if there were quite enough Soul Fragments in the deck to go for it.
Yeah, I think there were 4 at the time, so it would have ended up 2 value trades, 1 on the Apprentice and 2 kill the Raz, 1 on the Apprentice and 1 value trade, so maybe it didn't even end up being that clean. I don't mind XC going for more mana efficiency and then pushing for a bigger Militia next turn.
Is he just going face again? Oh my goodness, XC is an absolute beast!
It's how I like to play this matchup from the Demon Hunter perspective, but this is the big push now from NikosFas.
Yeah, you can do finger guns all you want, Nikos. That's still a pretty unimpactful selection of minions, sadly.
Yeah, but that's a big deal that XC drew another fragment here, so between having used the Shard Shatter last turn and having drawn that, the Militia only had 2 fragments at the beginning of the turn. This is still a pretty good Blade Dance, and he has Soul Shear to charge it up for the next turn. If he even needs it, though, because he's just putting together weapon and minion-based lethal this entire time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that XC, even though we may disagree on his decision to go for silencing the lab partner instead of Raz, the decision to leave it up and not kill it with his weapon has worked out so beautifully for him by employing that Blade Dance instead and just easily repping lethal now.
Right. And NikosFas needs a Walking Fountain stat.
Yep.
There's a line where you try and discover Ice Barrier. Maybe that is higher percentage.
I don't mind starting with that. You can... Oh no, you can't get in... Yeah, I mean, you can still get in the one Conjurer's Calling, which is good
Right,
enough.
if you whiff on the Ice Barrier with the magic trick. I agree. I like that line.
Someday I'll be just like you.
Ooh,
Okay, Frostbolt.
Frostbolt is insane here.
Yup, that is huge. XC not running. Oh my god, hello?
That's
Hunt,
insane!
that is also just repping counter lethal.
Whoa!
Hello?
Explode.
Yeah, Nikos is feeling it, and you know what? Rightly so. He is on the cusp of going 8-1 through to the top 8 almost certainly at that point. And in stunning fashion as well.
Can this Penflinger get 6 damage through? That's the only way, but I don't think it's there.
Penflinger coin. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I think you might have run out of mana at that point anyway.
Right, yeah.
Oh, it's
I
really
guess this
close.
has to be a Militia turn instead. Currently 4 fragments in the deck.
Okay.
He can get that up to 6 if he starts with the Soul Shear. He would have to commit the coin too, but I think survival is the primary goal right now, not necessarily going for Penflinger maximum juicing for the next turn. Because
No,
he
I
will just
agree.
be unfrozen anyway.
It is absolutely mammoth though at this point. It can do 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, is that a full clear he's got now?
I think just barely the full clear. And Nikos has 5 damage with a ping. Needs to find some way to deal the lethal right now, if not remove all this damage and freeze once again. It's such a tall order.
Oh, Ray of Frost is a start. If he can find Frostbolt off of the Mana Cyclone or Mirror Image, just anything to stop this.
Yeah, you can see there he's holding off on the second Ray of Frost because he was leaving himself the mana to potentially go for Frostbolt again. That was the out. He doesn't hit it, and NikosFas looks super upset, but honestly, he was not meant to win this game the way that panned out. He had a very lucky Frostbolt towards the end there, but he shouldn't be too upset overall because the series is still in his favor.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you that it's obviously not looking very favorable at this point, especially with the recent nerfs, but I mean, that's how Mage does win, to be fair. It always looks super cheesy when they take the win because they generate Ice Barrier, Frostbolt, whatever it may be, or get these insane minions off of a giant Conjurer's Calling. But, you know, that's what you're playing towards, and I think Nikos did that very, very well. Even the play that honestly kind of flew under my radar at the time, but specifically not going for the Shen Vala, I think was really great recognition of where he was at. He needed to spend all his mana on spells to cheapen the giants, and that very, very nearly got him a win. And I'm sad to see that it didn't pay off, but I'm also glad to see that XC is in with a chance of turning things around.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because Shenvala can be a bit of a bait in the matchup, in my opinion. Even if you get double activation on it, the difference on health between the 5/5s and the 8/8s is a lot more than it seems initially because every health breakpoint is tougher for Demon Hunter to get a clear with Blade Dance on. And the 5/5s generally feel within reach. It's just if they have a weapon equipped, it's just hero power Blade Dance to get rid of those 5/5s, whereas the Giants can be persistent problems. And as you can see on the 8 mana breakpoint, there are tons of amazing outcomes when you go for Conjurer's Calling. Very close there, but NikosFas will have another chance on his Mage versus now XC's Priest.
Your curiosity.
Taking a look specifically at this build of Priest, it looks fairly standard from what I'm seeing. There's the one Alusha that's a little bit unfashionable, I think it's fair to say, in most of the lists I'm seeing at the moment, but the one Twilight Drake that we saw Viper innovate on a few weeks ago in Grandmasters, and I've become a big fan of since. Seems as good a list as any to take a win against Mage as the Priest.
Right, also a big deal that he just starts with a dragon in hand so he can get those early clerics online. This is absolutely what Priest likes to see. Only thing he's missing maybe is Ascetic, but just having these value minions to contest the early boards and then go for Raise Dead to make sure that he has things to do every single turn is the way that Priest can try and pressure the Mage just a little bit, because I do think that if Priest gives the Mage too much time, they can absolutely put together value to outlast the Priest.
Actually having a real conundrum as to whether you go face here or trade. I think you just take the trade here. It doesn't really deny anything, and if they're pinging on turn 2 to get rid of it instead, I think you're happy with that, in all honesty, if they're not going for Cram Session, One Maker, or Solarian.
Right. Okay, the Evasive Feywing is the cheapest option, but I'm always tempted by Skeletal Dragon. I'm pleasantly surprised every time I play this card by how impactful it can be.
I think Feywing is just a little bit too good against Mage. When you pair it with the Raise Dead, you have a real consistent threat that they're going to struggle to deal with in the next few turns.
Definitely buy that argument. It's just both of them are awkward picks because the mana doesn't work out perfectly. Like, you don't end up getting to use the discount because he was certainly going to play one of the formerly 4-cost cards on the next turn. But now that he's picked up Second Studies, no problem whatsoever. Oh, Draconid.
Oh man, how do you even space this out? Because obviously if you pick Draconid, you can then go 6 into 7 with Draconid and Skeletal Dragon. Into 8 actually with Murazond for that matter. But Twin Tyrant is a ludicrously powerful card. I feel like pretty much every time I play it, I'm never disappointed with it.
It's true, a lot of the Mage minions are small enough that they get immediately removed by that. I was eyeing the Draconid for the same reason you were eyeing the Feywing. It's just a minion that Mage really struggles to get rid of because they can't target it with freezes.
So that's 2 for 2 on slight disagreements, I think, with XC's Dragon choices there.
Ooh, that top deck, that is a steal on the Solarian if he wants it.
That is a huge deal.
Your mind is not your own.
Oh, and the curve just works out so beautifully, like Skeletal Dragon available next turn into question mark. You know, you don't really care what you do the turn after, and then the Twin Tyrant comes down. It's just gorgeous.
I consider XC a Priest expert, even though the Priest he was playing at the time was of a much different build than this.
I think XC just realized he took 1 extra damage that was a bit unnecessary at that point, but whatever. It's a small mistake.
This is a big turn for NikosFas now, though, trying to go for a Cyclone setup and holding on to Evocation, I believe, if he went for One Maker.
You don't pick the ones.
It's interesting you decided to fully kill the 2/4 instead of going for 1 more effect to kill off the Drake there. Wasn't fully on board with that.
True. Yeah. Okay, got the Brain Freeze anyway. Oh wait, he doesn't have spell damage.
Rise up!
So it's probably just going to kill off the Solarian instead.
No, he does have spell damage if he wants to. I mean, I think honestly that there's still merit if you want to kill off the Solarian just to stop any attacks being able to come through. But it was a little bit closer.
Yeah, I don't know why I went blind on the lab partner. That is my bad. But XC is certainly facing a huge conundrum now. Has Shadow Word Death, thankfully, to get rid of the Mana Giant. And I think he might just be fishing for something to do on the next turn, because this turn is certainly just going to be removal.
Yeah, I mean, that next turn, spoken for, 7 Ways to Sunday. He's got so many powerful plays at that point. Wave plus Cabal, Shadow Priest, Twin Tyrant, Murazond, Skeletal Dragon. His next few turns just go absolutely bananas. Whereas, in all honesty, Nikos got some pretty suboptimal spells there. That was not the kind of selection you're looking for.
These are super reactive, and the Encanter's flows are not the greatest at this point, especially since he's already drawn the Evocation. I think that's the premium target to discount now that it's been nerfed, but it's no longer in the deck.
Okay, that's a decent draw. You could even start with Encanter's Flow if you think you've got the mana spare to recoup that mana at a later date.
I'm definitely interested in playing 1 or 2 of those, because after you spend 2 mana on Cram Session, I'm not really sure what proactive plays he can end up with the 4 remaining.
Your power
I mean, honestly, I was kind of more interested in just jamming Jandis onto the board. I appreciate you're then walking into turn 7, which is the Soul Mirror, obviously. But I don't know, this hand wasn't really doing quite so much there.
Yeah. Oh, Prime picked up for XC. How do you like this priest nerf, Derek?
Oh my lord, I don't even know what you go for here. Like, Cabal Shadow Priest is powerful here, absolutely, but I think because of the ceiling is so high in terms of what wave plus Cabal Shadow Priest can go, I think I like going for something else here, be it Twin Tyrant or Mirazond.
Definitely eyeing the Twin Tyrant, but it does now, because of that Arcane Amplifier, have one poor target. So he is going to go for Mirazond instead, get that card draw going, and also some decent board presence himself. The line, the one big fear here is Raz.
That's true, yeah, that would be a little bit scary.
Okay, how can he engineer this devolving missiles best? I'm certainly looking at leveraging that alongside the Arcane Explosion. Gonna start with it first. I wonder if there was any room to trade off Lab Partner first. But that's a great outcome. So, hey, that card is banned! Banned!
Hey!
Oh no, it's in the Race Dead pool, Dara.
Oh wait! Oh, is this a world first competitive Silas? Oh my lord!
Maybe.
Please, please!
We are getting ahead of ourselves here. There's no Race Dead in hand, but that would be something else.
Imagine! Oh,
yeah,
we need there to be like...
Absolutely imagine.
What's an insanely terrible minion you can give your opponent? Like, he needs to generate, I don't even know, a Doomsayer or something and then blow up his opponent's board.
Yeah. I don't care about what terrible minion he can give NikosFas. I'm thinking about what minion he can steal from the other side. Rotating the board definitely creates a lot of niche situations, and nobody is even practicing their positioning for that just yet. And it very likely won't happen, but we can dream.
We can dream indeed. Anyway, for the moment, XE going for a reasonable play with the Cabal Acolyte, which I am perfectly okay with. Again, like I said, he's got the Shadow Priest plus the Wave of Apathy, so it's not like he's losing the potential for a big steal later on with this line.
Scrapple Golem is a premium outcome here.
Terrible Silas positioning, though, I've got to say, there. Putting in a nice big minion on the other side. Although, actually, he made it the illusion version, so you know what? Good Silas position. Well done.
I mean, I was going to ask for a legitimate reasoning why you would put the illusion on the taunt minion instead here. Especially since it's 4 attack, that seems to be a bit more durable against Priest.
I mean, honestly, I think my best guess is because it doesn't make sense. Like, you do it on the minion that you think they would steal, which is exactly what happens here. Nikos gives the minion that he put illusion on. Completely mind games here.
Man, that is really clutch. I mean, I would not have made the read that they were going to steal again that turn because he had just used Cabal combo in the recent turns, but that works out really great for NikosFas. Gets to push extra damage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly not sure if that was his exact reasoning, but that's the way it works out here. He can be quite happy with that outcome for sure.
I couldn't think of any other reasoning. And now it feels like XC has to go for some prime time answers. Especially since the secret was developed and the Soul Mirror is not guaranteed to go off. Not that it would have been particularly strong here. And he didn't really want to use one of the premium 1-cost spells to potentially test for a counterspell.
Oh, Arcane Breath, pretty good. Getting Apotheosis as well is not half bad. And he gets to go again.
Hello? Oh, no race that generated my Silas dreams.
Okay, bad end there, but overall, a very respectable use there of the Solarian Prime. Not insta blowout game winning, but good enough to pull him back in the lead.
Yeah, that is far in the lead, I must say. But NikosFas, even though Cobalt Spellkin and Wandmaker can't give Evocation anymore, Magic Trick absolutely still can.
Ugh. I mean, I guess rolling Fireball is okay, but that was not the kind of spells you're looking for, to be honest.
Yep, I agree. At least gets the Tome of Intellect to have something preserved in the hand after these other spells get used up, but it's looking really tough for NikosFas if he doesn't hit the Giant soon.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. I was kind of interested in Spellbender over Tome of Intellect plus, Incanter's Flow, just because it can be very, very powerful in this matchup to deny a buff spell as well as a removal spell on the other side.
He couldn't fit all of that in, right? The 2 mana on Evocation, then 5 on Rolling Fireball. So you'd have to choose between Bender.
Oh, he had 3 left over, right? Because the magic trick played first costs 0. So I think it'll just fit in. Yikes!
These are not great. No value whatsoever.
I guess Icicle.
Probably just take. I think I like the mirror image just because this is a cyclone turn.
Okay, fair enough.
And he really needs this cyclone to give him heavy hitters. We're talking box, deep freeze. Okay, deep freeze is a good start, or power of creation.
Was that really not a missiles first there? Like,
yeah, I don't know about that.
I mean, you can save it for like maybe to go after for it to go face, but like that's an extra spell that he could have had. That could have been the box, you know, the one card that you need to pull this one back.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the face damage is quite irrelevant here. He needs value more than anything. And speaking of value, XC has no shortage of it whatsoever, but he does have the Raised Dead! Silas, let's go!
Roll up, roll up. The carnival's coming to town.
He's just so far ahead that I wouldn't even hate Tempo Sethic here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't begrudge him saving it like that. He has plenty of stuff to do, but maybe Sethic can find him that one specific card he needs to pull himself out of a rough situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's still correct to hold on to it. I'm just making the point that he's so far ahead that even if he dropped it, he would still have tons of good options.
Definitely feels that way. Now, kind of looking, I guess, at Soul Mirror starts to look okay at this point because this is an awkward sized board for Priest to deal with.
Yeah. And then the water alleys can all freeze each other. XC ends up with his own arcane missiles. Honestly, the Soul Mirror feels like his least flexible option here. So I favor just spending the mana on it. It also completes the side quest.
We must stop this.
That's true, actually, yeah. I didn't consider that. Ooh, another Mirrorzond? Yep. Sign me up. Oh, did he have a Spellbender already in play from earlier on? Maybe he did, which is why I didn't play the Spellbender. I may be being stupid.
I did not notice either. Conj, oh man, doesn't have any really expensive minions.
Yeah, like value trade and then take a couple of 4-drops is very far from game winning. I think I'd sooner go Evocation than I'd go that.
I agree. There's also a line where he takes this as a Flame Strike turn and then Evo the next turn, but he is looking for the big power turn right now. Potion is definitely playing on my mind just to get the Cyclone back, but does he have the hand space for all of that?
Right, I mean, he could trade. It's awkward, right? Because if you trade in the Spellwing, obviously then you get the missiles back to hand. He could trade it in first if he wants to burn the missiles specifically to get back the minions he really wants, but I believe because the Cyclone was the minion that was played first, that's the one he really cares about, so he'll get that back to hand no matter what here. Yeah.
And he does dump a couple spells before the potion, so I think it's still just gonna work out here. And with the mana, he can go for the Arcane Missile still. Yeah, this is really cleanly done from Nikos.
Nice ordering, and potentially gives him the value that was needed. And also, I've been assured that the recent bug with Potion of Illusion minions and Conjurer's Calling has been patched. So Water Elemental plus Conjurer's Calling will give 4-drops now and not 1.
There are going to have to be some very impressive 4-drops because XC is finally turning up the gas here. Able to get the Sethic train going. More Raised Deads. But I feel like he would be interested in just completing the side quest here, even if it takes another Apotheosis. And then again, it's not very mana efficient, is it?
Not really. I mean, just getting the biggest things on board each turn, it feels more important, because if you're just removing Mage's threats every turn and not actually doing anything yourself, it gives them the time to maybe find an insane Solarian Prime or whatever to pull back.
Problem with biggest thing is that he would end up overdrawing, right? It would put him to 10 cards if he plays
true,
the
yeah.
Cobalt Spellkin. Just ending up with the hero power here. Not gonna lie, the Apotheosis looked tempting there just to get the side quest done and also another generation on Sethic and just have a stronger board.
I agree. Or like, maybe even just Wave of Apathy, I think, would have done it as well. Like, there was a way to make a slightly more aggressive push there, I think.
Definitely, if he's holding on to it, it is because he has Pyro, and he's just making sure that he has answers for the next big board that comes down, because without having seen Mana Giants yet, he knows that Mage can still pull some tricks out from under him. And this is absolutely the big push that Nikos was looking for.
It was, and it's also the amount of value that he may need to get there, because another Deep Freeze off of a 2-spell Cyclone is pretty good. This, if there's not immediate strong clears for XC, could get there.
And here is the big board clear with the Apotheosis, and he can death away the Supreme Abyssal. Actually a threat here because NikosFas does not want to go face yet.
Oh,
the
got Silas!
It happened! It happened! Oh my god!
World
Moving
first!
so hard, but it happened.
Oh, and he gets
why
a prime as well! What is
Why did he
happening to
have-
this game?
Why did he have to generate such good minions, which means he'll be less incentivized to play the Silas?
This Silas could be actually ludicrous, though. Like, what if Nikos goes all in on a giant, huge conjuring turn again? Like, he can just steal a
Yeah.
big minion!
I am honestly not 100% sure how the mechanics work just yet, but I believe if you start with a board state like this, 4 and 2, if you choose to rotate counterclockwise, it would, say, give XC the Supreme Abyssal and give Nikos the Twin Tyrant, right?
Indeed, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Due time.
It would still preserve the 4-to-2 ratio, that is. In any case, to be serious, this does look like a Flame Strike turn.
Sure, whatever. Silas, Silas!
Derek, we have to care about something else. Come on. This is important for NikosFas. He is on the brink of qualifying through to playoffs. Flame Strike and Combustion is a full clear here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a couple of ways you can go about it. Obviously, I think what he's thinking here realistically is how can I fit in the Conjurer's Calling on this turn, because
Right, yeah.
this Supreme Abyssal is garbage in a face race. He needs to turn it into something more
True.
impactful, which is exactly what he's going for here, which means XC could steal whatever comes off of it like a Lucent Bark with the Silas.
How does it work if they don't have any minions to begin? Oh wait, the Silas itself is a minion, and because he got
guess so.
Troublemaker, he can steal just Lucent Bark if you choose to rotate counterclockwise.
Yes.
But this looks like a Prime turn. Or Soul Mirror, I guess.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
I'm desperately wishing for Silas to be good enough. You set it up so well there, and if it hadn't been Troublemaker, then we could have been talking, but there's
Please.
just too much of a threat for leaving that on board.
Ah! Boring, but probably the correct play here. And honestly, a very powerful play. Getting the Troublemaker there is a huge deal, obviously, to get those extra 3/3s at the end of the turn. This is now difficult for Nikos to deal with, or at the very least it would be, if not for the Flame Strike that he saved to go for right now to swing things back again.
That is huge that he held on to it. Such a good spot for him to go for the conj on the turn that I was suggesting Flame Strike, because like you mentioned, the Supreme Abyssal was not very useful. If you're clearing the board, it means that you want to go face, but he couldn't go face with the 12-12, and now this looks like a Silas turn. Please, XC, please!
It's so good! It's actually good here!
How does it work with a dormant minion?
Yes!
I don't know!
Adventure and excitement to win.
But this rotates clockwise, and then he gives a 1-2, gets back another Lucent Bark.
I think you
That
want
way?
this
This
way,
way?
right? I think it's that way?
Dude, Wait,
Okay,
how do
that
you
way.
even choose? Okay. I don't know how that reads in a Chinese client. It doesn't even say clockwise or counterclockwise, so it's messing with my brain. You have to look at the animation to know which one you want.
All I will say is that, Gia, we have made history. This is a world-first competitive Silas Darkmoon. At the very least, on stream.
Yeah.
We did it,
And
everyone.
it was really sick. I'm
It was
super happy
sick!
about this. Yeah.
It was actually really good.
No way Nikos was thinking about that off of the Raised Dead, but I'm glad we got to witness it, Dark. It is history being made. And you know what? To all the viewers out there, it was a ruling that you're not allowed to submit Silas Darkmoon in any lists for this tournament, but if you generate it, there's no ruling that says you cannot play it.
My man, XC.
Right. I'm just looking for a way for him to damage himself so he can revive the Lucent Barks, but that is just me continuing the memes after Silence. So definitely looks like his priority is getting rid of the Raz instead.
I mean, he could go heal the opponent and renew his own face, right? And then that would
Yes.
resurrect both of them.
That is a play for sure, but I think his primary consideration was just getting rid of the threats on the other side.
Okay, that'll res one of them at least because he healed on the previous turn. Disgustingly powerful, and he's respawning it! He's gonna end up with 3 Lucent Barks! Hello?
NikosFas is just straight fatiguing now. His last threat is the Kalagos, the Discover with the Deep Freeze, and it's
that's
not
it.
going to be enough.
I think he can just wrap this one up now. Too much damage coming from the other side of the board. Too much value as well. And XC, my new favorite Hearthstone player in the world, he does it with style and gets there with Silas Darkmoon, the perfect teaser for the upcoming expansion. Nicely done.
Just so glad how this panned out, because the start of the series we were talking about how XC is so good at Priest. He had that big sweep with it against Team Liquid at GCWC. And then we saw the Silas, talked about how it was in the Raised Dead pool. I said it wasn't going to happen, and I looked very stupid. Okay, this is still not the most straightforward turn. He can put even more spell damage with the Ogre Magi and essentially turn the Raz into a Flame Strike at the end of the turn. That seems very powerful.
That sounds game-winning to me. I mean, I'm looking if there's any line that he can go for that plus a Pyromancer play to, like, sweep up everything. But honestly, if he just plays the Wave of Apathy and then passes, I think
Right.
that's probably a winning play.
I like that as well. He
Oh my
just
God.
doesn't need to go for Prime for any shenanigans. Looks like he's going to go for Wave plus Minion development instead, because actually the Ogre Magi +1 spell damage doesn't give him any breakpoints to get rid of an additional damage, right? Just the 3 AoE is enough to clear the Raz on the other side. And NikosFas has an Azure Explorer and a Dream right now, but there is certainly nothing he can discover to get him out of this.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that can pull him out of this one. Draw a card, see what's in it. Not going to be game-winning. And now 2 games in a row, right on the cusp of going all the way. Nikos throws it down. The Mage has lost twice now against both the Demon Hunter and the Priest on the other side. And my goodness, if you thought that that one was a little bit clowny with Silas Darkmoon making an appearance, it's the best is still yet to come, obviously, with the Mage Mirror to close this out between XC and Nikos.
Oh, that was such good fun, Derek. I mean, normally I'm on the anti-clowny side of things, but if we get to see a world first and make history in Hearthstone, then sign me up. Sorry to NikosFas that he had to be on the receiving end of that, but that is such good thinking from XC to make use of the resources he was given. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the first time he ever played Silas in any situation, and he figured out the best way to use it for sure, gaining an extra Lucent Bark and completely starving Nikos of resources. But we will, of course, end things on the Mage Mirror now.
We will indeed. In 100 years' time, who knows? Household names, Neil Armstrong, XC, the real pioneers of this world. I think of equivalent stature, it's fair to say, at this point as well. And taking a look at the major lists that both of these players have, I believe that neither player has gone for the
On the wrong side,
Spellkin version, which is still cropping up here and there, despite what I thought would happen with the nerf to Evocation. And I am currently a much bigger fan of the build that both of these players have gone for.
That is right, and already the opener for XC is looking a lot better. He has the coin, of course, and on top of that, lab partner with cram session, and also primordial studies, so he just gets to choose how greedy he wants to be with the cram session.
Oh, it says explode!
So generally my practice when there is lab partner and primordial in the opening hand is to just play lab partner, and
Agreed.
you can potentially hold on to primordial studies as an activator for, say, a cyclone turn or apprentice. It generally feels like XC's next turn is going to be spell damage minion coin cram session either way.
Yeah, I mean the big one for me is that say you discover Steward of Scrolls, and then you play your lab partner that was already in hand. You can't play it till turn 5 now, as opposed to being able to play it on turn 4 if you banked the mana on turn 2. So I agree. I'm not the biggest fan of the way that XQC has meted this out, but it's extremely small things that are unlikely to make a big difference.
And in the end, he does also just end up holding onto the coin here, and because of the second studies, can still put together a huge cram session turn. Look at this!
Ludicrous. This could be 4 cards if he wanted it to here, which, I mean, absolutely. The coin, I think, is well worth it to exchange it for a card when you have the Apprentice in hand. You just want to find those cheap spells.
Yeah, that is backbreaking. Such bad news for NikosFas, but he is unfazed. He currently has a good chance of devolving the Solarian, at least. Oh, there's even a guarantee if he goes for ping trade. Yeah.
Yep, I like the look of this. The one thing that I actually question about this turn, weirdly enough, is whether this should have been, instead of a ping, a double Ray of Frost turn, because I know that's quite clearly less efficient, but it allows him to play Giant next turn, whereas this way he's just going to be going Ray of Frost on turn 5 instead of playing a 5-mana 8/8.
Definitely a point worth bringing up. I think NikosFas is just of the opinion that 5-mana 8/8 is not actually that good against Mage. It gets frozen. He is maybe looking to build up to playing Giant plus Conj all in the same turn, but I definitely think you bring up a good point because his hand wasn't currently allowing him to do something like that. In the end, he conjures on a 4-drop and ends up with a pretty good outcome with the Hench Clan Shade Quill.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going for this line, it's an entirely different story, of course, because I imagine he didn't want to play the Giant, like you said, because he thought the Conjurer's Calling was more impactful, which is very relevant. I hadn't actually considered this line. Still not 100% convinced, but it is worth saying that Ray of Frost used for that early cheapening of the Mana Giant instead of using it for the utility of freezing is a big downside, because you get a lot more survivability by freezing for a turn.
Also, just the Ray of Frost as a card, a cheap spell, is important to hold on to should he get a Cyclone in the near future, because his hand is pretty dry of cheap spells at the moment. So XC can use Devolving Missiles here to try and remove a lot of stats from the Shade Quill.
Yeah, but he could have just played an 8/8 on this turn. I don't know why our players are so hesitant to play cheap Mana Giants in this game. Like, are they saving it specifically for the play of going for it for 0 mana or getting it with Conjurer's Calling? I don't know. I think I like the idea of just getting that proactively on board there.
Yeah, that certainly seemed like a cleaner window for XC to go for, but now NikosFas realizes that his hand was not shaping up for big discounts in any way, shape, or form, so he does commit to the first Giant, and XC has many ways of either stalling or dealing with it, but he will want to deal with it because he knows there's the second half of the Conj in hand.
Wow, I really thought he was going to go in there as well. That felt like a pretty good Apprentice lab partner, and then just literally dump your entire hand. I appreciate that that leaves you incredibly low on value, but unless you're hitting specifically the Mana Cyclone, then you're not really getting that much ability to refill this value anyway later on.
It's true. Ends up going for Counterspell to try and deny that Conjurer's Calling on the other side. It's a very fragile setup because NikosFas could have drawn or just kept a 1-cost card to test for first there, but because XC is ending up with the Devolving Missiles anyway, the Conj is a much smaller threat, and he ends up with a terrible 5-drop. That's such a disaster.
I mean, I'm willing to submit to XC that he did get the quest completed this way, which is worth quite a lot, absolutely. Still comes at the cost of a giant, so I'm not sure which one was necessarily better to go for, but getting the quest completed, or the side quest, sorry, completed while you can is worth a fair bit.
That is such a huge draw.
Oh my
XC's one
God.
downfall with this hand is not that much refill, but now he has Lab Partner with the Solarian sticking for a 3-card cram session. Just so far ahead in the resource war.
It's got to be Apprentice time now, right? Like, oh, he's holding back again. Interesting.
I think it's fine to just go for a Ray Giant type turn here.
Okay,
I
okay,
don't
fair.
know what the Apprentice actually accomplishes here, but having picked up the Cyclone, I could also just see that happening now.
I mean, the thing that Apprentice really does for me is it B's a 3-2, and it could have B'd a 3-2 for a few turns now.
Sometimes it do be that way.
It really do, Chief.
But after he picked up the Cyclone, maybe he's just thinking he wants to hold all of that together because it is a refill on top of just this first board being a huge problem for NikosFas. And now Nikos only has 1 spell. And
I mean,
he hasn't even tested for the secret.
He has a 5-drop in play. That's the solace he was taking here, but quite clearly we can see he's not even allowed this one small solace in this disaster of a game. He was 2-0 up. He himself, I thought, when he generated that Frostbolt against the Demon Hunter, that he was going to be sailing through to the top 8, but it all feels like it's just unraveling now. XE, finally, with the Apprentice coming down, a huge Cyclone turn, Giant already in play. It's really, it's looking so slim for a chance to Nikos to win this back.
All just slipping away, and he got so close. It does look like it's going to be a reverse sweep here. The generation of Frostbolt quickly outshined by the generation of Silas by XE in the very next game. But NikosFas still has some top decks, an Evocation maybe with the Apprentice in hand. Could give him some miracles, but the chances are looking very slim indeed.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's waving goodbye.
goodbye.
Not quite yet, Nikos. Not quite yet. There's still Prime and there's still Evocation. The 2 cards that were nerfed are the 2 cards that he needs to try and pull himself back in this game. There is a slim chance at redemption for him here.
He's going on 9 mana, so even a nerfed Prime could make something happen. Magic Trick can get Evocation. What's in the box? Foam can get Evocation.
Oh,
Nova gets
Frost
him
Nova!
a turn.
That's
okay.
huge! That's huge!
That is huge. Yup. More generation with Cyclone. Gets his own Giant to come down. Can clear the Apprentice on the other side. Okay.
That's okay. That's something. It's not great, but it's potentially enough. I mean, obviously we can see on the other side power of creation to boot, just to make this even more devastating. But he got the Giant in play. Maybe with the top deck of an Evocation, he can get this done.
Oh, it's just unnerved because he played Uncanter's Flow. I mean, you're right, it wasn't great for NikosFas. It gave him time, but the outs are the same, right? He's going to end up in the same situation where he's massively behind on board and needs a miracle. This is one more turn where he can draw the Prime.
Not sure if I really liked playing out the mirror image there, first of all. I know that it played around Counterspell to an extent, but I would accept that the Apprentice doesn't get frozen there, just to be able to have more space on the board, I think. But whatever. The important thing is he still has a huge Evocation. He is pulling so far ahead on the board, and there is very little that Nikos can do unless he gets the Prime or the Evo. That's what we're looking for.
Exactly. And even Evocation itself can't do very much, I would say. Like, the best outcome you can hope for is another stall turn. It's really the Prime that has the chance of swinging the board and also developing him some board presence. Of course! Of course!
Nikos,
Of course!
come on. It's time. This is your one shot.
We've seen Silas. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you see it, we cannot see Yogg. Oh my goodness, that's a start. What is this? The best Prime I've ever seen! What is that? Hello?
That was staggering! Nikos, you might be in with a chance!
He's just winning! Okay, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. There's still this giant that's stuck and a Conjurer's Calling available for XC, but that's a massive amount of stats that Nikos generated out of literally nowhere.
But look what XC can do on the other side. Double Conjurer's Calling on this giant. It's a 1-1 as well, and he turns them into 8-8.
Okay. That is going to just fatigue him if it dies. He has 7 cards left in deck because of all those mega cram sessions he put together.
So
But
if he shoots the giant, he's then tanking 23 damage, 24 with the ping, so he's not dead on the other side.
Yeah. But it's super scary. NikosFas has top decks for lethal at this point. And so that combustion used to remove more damage on board. No!
Okay.
But he can freeze the Deathwing.
Freeze the Deathwing. I mean, you pretty much have to stop all damage, so you also then have to
Freeze the Octosari, I assume.
freeze the Octosari.
5/5 into Giant.
Yeah.
Solarian Face, ping Lab Partner, and then XC can only attack with Mana Cyclone the next turn. It's not setting up lethal, but it's the best he's got.
I mean, the only question really is if you want to kill Octosari with the ping to give them the draw and play for fatigue.
Okay.
It's really risky.
That is super risky because it's a long time before XC actually dies from fatigue,
Yeah.
right?
It does deny him a lot of good cards, though, however. I mean, hopefully you get rid of the big ones like Giant and Solarian Prime, but that is unfortunately exactly what XC has access to now.
Oh man, it was a ballsy play, and maybe the play that Nikos needed to win the game in the long run because he was very much just relying on top decks for the next turn, no matter what the case would be.
That was a hella risky Conjurer's Calling there. Imagine if that was another Octosari for the win. Oh wait, I thought Spellwing was a beast for a second. I thought it was going to draw him a card. It's an elemental.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's huge! 5
cards!
What is this?
Oh my
he can-
god!
Wait, a gigantic Raz as well?
Is that enough? Can that ever
It's
be
not-
enough?
Oh wait. 5 down. He leaves the Flesh Giant up one way or another, right?
Oh, you're right. I mean, he could leave the Flesh Giant up. That's a valid play on this turn.
Right? He's not dead on board to it, but he will be giving the Arcane Missiles if he just goes Raz here. So he's dead a lot of the time with Flesh Giant attacking plus missiles.
So Evocation can hit Frost Nova even with the mana restrictions from the
I think he
Tricaster.
Yeah, I do think he trades the Tricaster first. You can start with
sure.
Trick. He's just looking for freeze here. He just wants to stall because XE is fatiguing.
Right, this is it. We're looking for Frost Nova.
Years I have studied.
Oh no,
Oh,
Cone of Cold is too expensive.
And he could have played it, right, if he hadn't played out the Spellwing. That's the breakpoint he didn't play around.
Yeah.
I think that's just it.
It really is. My goodness, that got so close. And NikosFas tried his hardest, the Prime and the Cram session, baiting us into him having hope. But XE does close it out in a reverse sweep at the very last second there. That was such an intense Mage Mirror.
That was unbelievable. That was by far one of the coolest Mage Mirrors that I have ever seen. And we've had to watch a lot of those over the course of Grandmasters, let me tell you. I mean, I think that Nikos obviously played to his outs very, very well. The draws that he got one after the other were, I mean, considering he got a pretty rough start, we're extremely fortunate to get all of those one after the other to have even a chance of staying alive there, coupled with one of the most insane primes that it's possible to get. I mean, heartbreaking that it wasn't quite enough. I am devastated for obviously Nikos in particular, as well as all of the Greek Hearthstone scene that I have a lot of respect for, a very passionate scene. But at the same time, you've got to respect XC there. I think piloting his decks with aplomb consistently throughout the series.
This is already my series of the tournament to watch. It's not in the top 8 quite yet, but just the fact that Silas Darkmoon made an appearance and the way that Mage Mirror panned out at the very end, couldn't ask for more. And I am incredibly happy to see XC move on because I think he's a deserving player, maybe being